on Sundays with subscribers, we had on Brian Mistely, which was an awesome conversation. Whip smart guy. Whenever I meet like a CEO or a business-minded person, I'm like, oh, that's why you're successful. You're very, very smart. So we had him on Sundays with subscribers. Brian Mistely is the CEO of Inrix. And you probably heard about Inrix. It's been based in Kirkland for almost since early on in its inception. It was originally in Redmond, like they started in a garage. And then they moved to Kirkland, and they've really enjoyed being in Kirkland. And I mean, Kirkland, if you compare it to Seattle, I would say Kirkland's very business friendly, certainly. But so they're there, and then they find out that King County is going to open one of those homelessness hotels just steps away. Not to mention there's like schools in the area. So it's like, why would you open it there? And their, lease was coming up due, and he was really concerned about the public safety issues that would come along with a homelessness hotel, which I really don't blame him because we've seen that happen over and over. And so Brian joined us on Sunday, and he said one of the most frustrating aspects of this was they really tried to participate in the public process of this homelessness hotel. But at every juncture, it just felt like it was a done deal, and nothing they said or did was going to stop it.
So we heard about this project about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And me and a variety of other business leaders in the area sent a letter to the city council, never received a response. So then we went to a city council meeting to speak, and we were not allowed to speak.
Why?
Mainly because they just wanted to kind of explain their rationale, and they didn't really want feedback. And that was really, I think, what bothered a variety of us, is this kind of seemed like it was coming down from King County and Kirkland, and they were going to do it no matter what, and they weren't really open to feedback.
Yeah, so it was like, they always have, I call it the public input hoax, where, hey, we're going to have some town halls, and it's like, we're not going to listen to anything you say.
Right.
You're not going to change our mind, but we'll have the town hall to check the box. So did it kind of feel like a checking of the box?
It felt like a sell job.
Yeah.
They had somebody from the county there. They had obviously the Kirkland deputy manager talking, but it was really, this is what's going to happen and this is why it's going to be great. And they really weren't open to any feedback.
Yeah, and like other places where we've seen these homelessness complex be shoved down the throat of the community that they're going in, for Brian Mistely, the chief concern was very clearly public safety. They'd already had some concerns with a trail that was sort of near their building and some shady characters that would bring in. So this was sort of putting things over the top.
I would say the number one was employee safety.
Okay.
Again, we've had break-ins. This was Kirkland. You expect it to be very safe and a wonderful place to live and work. But we've had some break-ins in our parking lot. We've had, as I mentioned, a homeless person come up and just start raiding our kitchen. So fine, we can deal with that. But the biggest issue for us was, I succeed by attracting talented people to my company. I'm literally competing with Amazon and Microsoft for developers and programmers and engineers. So, if they don't feel safe coming to work, I've got a problem.
Yeah. So he makes the best decision he thinks he can make for his company, and they're moving their headquarters to South Bellevue. And look, we also talked about the overall business climate. There are some bad business decisions we make at the state level where he's not going to be able to escape that in Bellevue. But certainly I think Bellevue has done a much better job at balancing public safety, outreach to the homeless and economic interest. And so they see that, and the decision is done. I mean, they did what they could with the city of Kirkland, felt like their voice wasn't heard, concerned about public safety. And so he says, okay, we're renewing our lease and we're not renewing our lease, we're going to move to Bellevue. I was shocked by some of the reactions to this. To me, this is a story as old as time. How many business owners have we had on this show talking about that exact issue? And it's like, it's not waking leaders up to it. We've had so many Seattle business owners, Ballard, who are like, what the heck is going on? I can't conduct business when there's literally someone ODing on fentanyl in the alcove, and you guys want to call this empathy and leave them there. So this is like a story as old as time. It's been going on in Seattle more and more so for 15 years. And King County, was it Redmond, I think, was going to push one of these like homeless complexes in their downtown area. And thankfully there was enough pushback. But it's like bad policy. Don't care what anybody has to say about it. The stakeholders aren't brought to the table. And then people end up moving their businesses. And everybody wants to gasp like, oh my gosh, do you not care about the homeless? It's just crazy to me. So over on Cairo Radio, there's a mid-morning show, G and Ursula. Look, I love my friend Ursula Reutin. I love you, Ursula. I wouldn't have this job if it weren't for you. Literally brought me to Seattle to work in news. Doesn't mean that her opinion is correct on this. It's very, very wrong. So the G and Ursula show, this is at Cairo Radio. G. Scott, host of the G and Ursula show on Cairo News Radio, slammed Mistely's reasoning, especially since the facility isn't open yet. Quote, Imagine having such a strong opinion about what's going on somewhere, and yet you haven't even opened in that area, G explained. How can you really take this person, this CEO, seriously? And by the way, where did he get his data from when it comes to this topic? Are you kidding me? There is so much ample evidence of what happens around these homelessness facilities. And to say, how can you take this person, this CEO, seriously? He has one of the most successful businesses in Washington state, and he's been here for years investing in our community and creating hundreds of jobs around the world. And you, no offense, like a low-tier radio host, want to be like, how can you take this CEO seriously? Give me a break. It's absolutely crazy. How can you have such a strong opinion? So you're knocking the CEO as hundreds of employees he wants to keep safe for having a strong opinion about their safety and their well-being, given ample evidence of what has happened around these homelessness facilities and other areas, evidence that I will talk to you about momentarily. And then Ursula Reutin, who's a co-host, said, the CEO of Inrix is an example of weak leadership. Brian Mistely is not being truthful, and I think it's actually shameful that he's blaming a facility for the homeless that hasn't even opened yet for his decision to move. Holy smokes. So we'll get to this in a second, but it's like you need like some sort of spreadsheet to tell you here's how 911 calls increase. No, there has been so much ample real world evidence of what happens when you have one of these homelessness facilities, and this was Brian's chief complaint that he articulated very well on our show, that if it were a clean and sober facility, they probably wouldn't have the same concern and they wouldn't have moved. And he'd be happy to do volunteer and help out with it. But this, like all the other King County facilities, is not a clean and sober facility. And so you have people who are living in what used to be a motel still doing drugs. And you don't just naturally think, yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. Andrea Suarez, and I don't know if this was in a direct response to Brian Mistely and Inrix's decision, but it's very pertinent. She pushed this out. And of course, who knows better than Andrea? Who's actually in these places? Do I need data from the city and the county? Or am I going to believe what Andrea Suarez says when she's actually out working with these individuals, going into these facilities that the county are run by the government? She said, these are my photos. On the left, a clean and sober housing program. And it shows people sitting around a very clean location, gathered round. They look actually like pretty put together. Looks like a very safe place. She said, on the right, low barrier housing first drug use enablement program. Which one should taxpayers fund? And the low barrier drug enablement program, filth, squalor, overdoses, deaths inside the facility. How many of those have we covered? A guy beating his dog in the Seattle apartment. He was just given an apartment to get him out of the Burien homeless encampment. There's been all sorts of crimes and calls from 911, guy beating his dog right in the window for people to see. It's because you're letting people live there and they're still taking them out of a tent and putting them in an apartment when you haven't fixed any of the things that are going on, be they mental or substance abuse or both. That's not gonna make them better neighbors. So to just dismiss when there's ample evidence that Brian Mistely is can't be taken seriously as a CEO, or is lying and wanted to move to Bellevue anyway and is just using this homelessness complex as an excuse. Now, I don't own a business as big as Brian's is, but you don't pick up and move everything and everybody when you don't have a good reason to do so. And from a business environment, taxation, sort of monetary standpoint, it's actually worse for him to go to Bellevue. The square footage on a business lease in Bellevue is far higher than the square footage on a business lease in Kirkland. And take it from me, I mean, we've looked all over the place when we decided where our studio move was going to be for what the square, you can go to Seattle and get it for like $9 a square foot, but nobody wants to be there because it's dangerous and filthy and horrible. But the most expensive place in Washington right now for a business lease is Bellevue. So what, they just decide for no reason they're going to move and pay more per square footage to be in Bellevue? No, it's clearly the safety concern. So just to dismiss that from his firsthand experience running a business there, concerned about the safety of employees, and he's a bad guy for speaking out about it, even though he spent a year and a half trying to tell the city his concerns to no avail. I know I have some bad takes sometimes. Now, Ursula, I love you. I love you. It's just a bad take. It's a bad take. I'm sure I've had bad takes that you've talked about on your show. So Brian, as I said in the interview, he talked about this like, we don't need to wait for it to open. We know exactly what's going to happen because it's happened everywhere else these homeless hotels have gone.
There are a variety of these facilities around the city. The interesting thing about this facility is we don't really have to wonder what it's going to happen. We've seen Plymouth Housing, which is the operator of this facility, operate several other facilities in the city. So we know what's going to happen, right? We've seen the number one place for 911 calls in Seattle is this and the Plymouth Housing facility in Seattle and the DESC facilities. So we know what happens when you, like you said, open them up. No supervision, no drug testing, no real background checks. It's pretty obvious that this is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. So there's always this complaint that happens when, and I'm sure somebody will respond to our interview like that, like it's a very NIMBY thing. Well, I want to help the homeless, but not in my backyard. For you, is there a type of facility you would have been okay with opening that close by?
Oh, absolutely. I'd be fine with this facility if they basically had it a drug-free hotel.
Yeah.
And if they had some on-site supervision. Like those would be the only two things they would have to do to, I think, have the local community be comfortable with it.
Yeah, and I think that whole reaction to Brian Mistley coming out and saying, hey, we're moving our business and here's why, is just evidence of why we're still in this situation. Like at this point in the homelessness realm, the government, the nonprofits, no one in our state working in tandem with the government on this issue deserves the benefit of the doubt anymore. There's ample evidence that the way the housing first approach that they have used has not worked. I mean, homelessness is worse. That's number one, right? Substance abuse is worse. That's number two, right? Some of the most, the blocks where there is the highest concentration of 911 calls are where? Where there's a high concentration of homeless people and drug users. I think that's number three. The evidence has added up that the housing first approach does not work. So I just don't get, especially people who have a voice to push back against these things, these automatic like, oh, the business person is just complaining for no reason. That's why we're here, is we shut out in Seattle the voices of business owners and stakeholders who it took a lot of courage for them to speak up because of the pushback like that they get, to just say this is the reality of what we're going through. I mean, business owners are what make a city successful. That's just the truth, right? They're the economic engines of the state. And to dismiss them out of hand and just expect that they'll deal with a homelessness facility that has proven time and time and time again, a model that it brings drug abuse and crime to your front door. Why would we have that expectation? Why wouldn't the harshest criticism be reserved for the government that continues to push an approach that's not working? It's just wild to me. So we appreciate Brian coming on the show. Again, if you're not a subscriber, but you want to catch our Sunday shows, you can become a subscriber today. unDividedPod.com. Just click on the little banner that says support the show for $5. You can check out our full interview with Brian and all our other subscriber content, like our daily subscriber show polls, etc. unDividedPod.com.